Hello, and thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Joke Rogers at Channels Television here in Lagos, and I'm joined by Vincent McCory from the Voice of America in Washington, D.C.
Thanks, I'm Vincent McCory at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Joke Rogers in Lagos brings you that story.
The United Nations Development Programme has pledged to support the Yobe state government and other northeastern states of Adamawa and Borno to return internally displaced persons in a dignified manner under its Solution Agenda Programme. The head of the UNDP in Nigeria, Mohammed Yahya, announced the plans during a courtesy call on Governor Maimbala Buni of Yobe State at the Government House in Damaturu, the state capital, where he explains that the programs on early recovery and vocational training are still ongoing in the most affected areas.
These are the internally displaced persons in Yobe State, northeast Nigeria, after forceful displacement from their ancestral homes by Boko Haram insurgents. The head of the United Nations Development Programme, Mohammed Yahya, and his entourage are here at Government House Damaturu on a courtesy call to Governor Maimbala Buni to strengthen the government's recovery process.
The Secretary General, as you know, Your Excellency, has prioritized Nigeria, specifically northeastern part of Nigeria, on what he calls his solutions agenda. There are millions of displaced people around the world, and what he had told us in the Nigeria side is to work very closely with you and the other two governors of the northeast to see how we can show a good example of how people can have a dignified solution to their prolonged IDP status.
Governor Buni, who thanked the UNDP for supporting its recovery, reconstruction and stabilization process, revealed all internally displaced persons have returned home, except Malondunari community in Gujba local government, as government is working out modalities of their return.
All the displaced communities in the state except Malondunari community in Gujba local government area have returned and resettled. This was facilitated by the construction of infrastructure, including the local government secretariat, police stations, hospitals, schools, water facilities, markets, and other public structures carried out by the state government and supported by some development partners. The intervention of the UNDP are indeed strategic to this administration's commitment to the recovery process and the restoration of lasting peace in the insurgency crisis-affected communities and the state at large.
From there, the UNDP representatives proceeded to inspect the newly commissioned 350-bed capacity maternal and child hospital, which he also pledged support.
We're quite impressed with the potential of this place dealing with something that is very important, issues of maternal and child health that impacts this state. So we are absolutely impressed with it, and for me, this is what Yobe is about. It's about accelerating the Sustainable Development Goals, investing in people, healthy people and educated people, which are two pillars of the governor's agenda.
With the renewed collaboration between the UN and Yobe state government, the victims of the insurgency say they are hopeful to return home at a later date after a decade of displacement.
Joining us to discuss the UNDP support program to states affected by insurgency in Nigeria is the Executive Secretary of the Yobe State Emergency Management Agency, Dr. Mohammed Goje. Glad to have you on the program today.
Thank you very much, and good morning all.
Right, so please give us an update on the current rehabilitation program being carried out by the Yobe State government for those displaced by insurgency.
Thank you very much. When His Excellency Governor Maimbala Buni came on board in May 2019, one of his policy direction in reintegration and rehabilitation of conflict-affected communities is to do it in a dignified and voluntary manner. His Excellency has directed relevant agencies to ensure that the return of IDPs must be dignified and voluntarily. And dignified in the sense that there must be an enabling environment for them to go and stay. That's why most of the communities affected by conflict, communities that Boko Haram have stayed for years, where after liberation by Nigerian army, roads were constructed in those communities, hospitals were reconstructed, public buildings were reconstructed, electricity was reconnected before people return. So in Yobe State, except for the Malundunari community, which the government is now intensifying effort to return them voluntarily or find them an alternative measures of staying, almost all communities affected by Boko Haram conflict have resettled back to their communities. And in those communities, when you go today, you will see road network, you will see water, you will see hospital, and you will see public buildings and presence of government structures, police stations, and other security agencies. So this is the model adopted by His Excellency, and that's why almost all the communities, except for Malundunari and some few communities in Yunusari and Gaidam, they have successfully returned and they are picking up the pieces.
So what's the state government doing in resettling, children in school, in ensuring that education, it gets to everyone concerned?
What His Excellency Governor Malabuni did was, one, to ensure that in those communities, mega schools were reconstructed, new mega schools that will at least enroll thousands of students to those schools. And before that, there was a baseline assessment that was conducted. In the baseline assessment, in one of the community, there was a classroom that has 600 pupils in that one classroom. You can imagine a teacher will not even finish taking attendance before even start giving the teaching to the students. So immediately he could reconstruct the mega school across each of the zones, and each of the communities that are affected by the conflict, the mega school for that zone is situated in that community. And also day secondary schools, junior day secondary schools were constructed. This is to enable young girls to go to the school and come back to their homes, or children that their parents cannot afford to send them to boarding school can access to go to that day schools. And that's why His Excellency is open to partnership with UN and other organizations so that they will key in and complement the existing government drive for more enrollment of especially girl child education.
Let's talk about that. The partnerships, with the development groups such as the United Nations. It seems the state, as well as others in the Northeast, are going to receive help from the development partners such as the UNDP with regards to resettlement of IDPs. It announced this recently during a visit to Governor Buni. What's the update on this, and what part will the Yobe State government play in this?
The partnership is ongoing, but of recent, the most interesting part is the partnership to ensure that the only political ward that the people have not returned, that are in host community for 12 years, has been resettled and in dignified and voluntary manner. So when they came in, His Excellency gave them the enabling environment. We have peace now. Our communities are accessible now. Go and meet our community, discuss with them, tell them hear from them, hear their stories. We went to the community, and the Yobe state will be one of the states that the United Nations will pilot the durable solution for internal displacement. The solution is not just forcing them to return or asking them that they must return. But then what are the options? He came to Yobe state capital for 12 years. The child that came to Damaturu that was 6 years, now he's 18 years old. Is that child willing to return? A young adult that came to Damaturu 22 years, he's now 32, he's married with children. Is he willing to return? So these are the approaches that His Excellency Governor Buni and UNDP are looking at. And we are hopeful that UNDP and other partners, especially Swiss government, will key in and ensure that there's safe and dignified return and a durable solution for IDP and displacement has been tested in Yobe State.
Right, Dr. Goje, I must thank you for your time today and for coming to, expand this discussion on Africa 54.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. You're always welcome.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. After the break, Zimbabwe Oil and Gas Exploration. Despite opposition from environmental activists, drilling continues in hopes to cut reliance on oil imports and create jobs. Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Zimbabwe's government is continuing with oil drilling projects near the border with Mozambique and Zambia, despite opposition from activists who warned that fossil fuel exploration will damage the environment. Columbus Mavunga files this report from Bire, where the exploration is taking place amid government hopes the project will cut its reliance on oil imports and create jobs in Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe started exploring for gas and oil which officials believe sits under an estimated 700,000 hectares near the borders with Mozambique and Zambia. A 20 million exploration project last year failed to yield results after the well collapsed. Paul Shimbodza is the managing director of Geo Associates, a private Zimbabwean company that is working with the government and an Australian company, Invictus Energy, on the exploration.
This project could go a long way in not only making Zimbabwe energy sufficient, but we hope that Zimbabwe could actually be a net exporter of power into the region. Power shortage is not an issue of Zimbabwe alone. There's a regional power shortage, and our crystal ball vision is that we'll be able to generate enough electricity from here to the region.
For this poor community, the project is welcome. Onassis Tanyanyiwa Musenwa is chief of water, one of the communities covered by the area of exploration.
Since it started, so many job opportunities have opened.
You would say something like
Last time, it was about 180. Now, it has created more than 200 jobs for Mbire and Umzarabani. Plus, they are buying what we produce here for their food.
But not everyone is for this oil project. Farema Gu, founding director of the Center for Natural Resource Governance, hopes the drilling teams come up and
once they find the oil and gas, they are going to displace thousands of people from Mbiri and Mzarabani. They are going to pollute both underground and surface water, and they don't care about the impacts on the environment and the people. And then when we look at renewable energy, the renewable energy dividend for Zimbabwe is quite massive. Renewable energy it can be a game changer in that it doesn't need a lot of infrastructure.
Geo Associates says it is working with the Environmental Management Agency of Zimbabwe to ensure that its project does not pollute the environment nor affect the health and well-being of locals. The energy companies are using data that was collected by Mobil in the 1990s. None of Zimbabwe's neighbors are oil producers, although Mozambique does have large deposits of natural gas about 1,000 kilometers from the area in Zimbabwe being explored. Kulambas Mavunga, VOA News, Mbire, Zimbabwe.
Unable to afford a flight out of his native Guinea but determined to study Islamic theology at an elite school, Mamadou Barry drew a map of Africa in his notebook and set off towards Egypt on a second-hand mountain bike, carrying only a change of clothes, a flashlight and a screwdriver. This report takes us on a journey with Mamadou in his quest to acquire financial support for his dream education.
Thousands of West Africans like Barry undertake risky journeys across the Sahara each year, searching for better living conditions and economic opportunities. But many never make it. Data from the International Organization for Migration shows that nearly 500 people died or disappeared on West African migration routes last year. Barry decided the risk was worth the reward. I had to fight, he said last month in Chad. That's why I decided to take up cycling. Covering approximately 100 kilometers each day, Barry cycled through Mali, Burkina Faso, Togo, Benin and Niger before stalling in N'Djamena, the capital of Chad, shaking from his planned routes by the ongoing conflict in Sudan. He was arrested 3 times along the way, twice in Burkina Faso and once in Togo, where security forces held him for 9 days without charge before releasing him in exchange for 35,000 francs, an equivalent of $56.35 US. That was everything he had saved for the rest of his journey. After that, he often slept in the bush for fear of coming to harm. Barry's luck changed in Chad after a local philanthropist who read about his journey online offered to fly him directly to Egypt and bypass Sudan's conflict zones.
If you have a dream, all things you have to do, you have to follow this dream, to go on its way, because that's what will help you. To say that today I'm doing this, tomorrow this, no, you will never see a good road. But if you have dream, rest on it and be strong on it. But if you are on it, God will help you. Yeah.
He arrived in Cairo on September the 5th and got a full scholarship to Al-Azhar days later. These days, Barry's dream is a bit bigger. He wants to return to Guinea, armed with this knowledge, when his studies are complete, to spread the faith that has taken him so far from home. 4 months and 7 countries after starting his bike around Africa, Mamadou Barry, who's 25 years old, is in Cairo with a full scholarship to Al-Azhar University, one of the world's oldest and most renowned Sunni learning institutions.
A 3-year-old startup company is leading Kenya into the world of high-tech manufacturing, building a sophisticated workforce capable of making their semiconductors and nanotechnology products that operate modern devices from mobile phones to refrigerators. VOA correspondent Mariama Diallo visited the plant and has this report.
Anthony Gitinji is the founder of Semiconductors Technologies Limited, or STL, about 3 hours' drive from Nairobi. He brought the know-how to Kenya from the United States, where he started work in 1997 on semiconductors, materials that conduct electricity and are used in thousands of products. Finding workers with the right skills was a challenge, but he says meeting the Vice Chancellor of Dedan Kimathi University of Science and Technology, also known as DKUT, was a game changer.
DKUT and STL formed a partnership that allowed for us to engage STEM-related education and develop it and tool it and orient it towards our specific industry, which is in the semiconductor and microchip space. And so we started attaching students and having internships through STL.
STL employs about 100 engineers, 70% of them women. Irene Gittich is a process engineer with a background in telecommunications and electrical engineering who graduated in 2019.
At STL, our goal or our vision is to be the leading chip manufacturer in Africa. And just to give context, a chip is like the driver or the brain of every system you can think of. And it is usually integrated on a circuit board, but they're usually very small in size. I can just show you here. Just a few millimeters they're inside here, yet they contain thousands of transistors.
Semiconductors are used in almost every sector of electronics. In consumer electronics, for example, they are used in microwaves, refrigerators, mobile phones, laptops, and video game consoles. Gittich says she entered the STEM sector after reading an article about another woman in the field.
So when I read through, what stood out for me is that she mentioned that in her class there were only 2 ladies, and of course I love doing challenging things, so that stood out for me.
Lorna Muturi is a mechatronics engineer who will be graduating this year. Just 22 years old, Muturi has already been working at STL for 2 years.
We need a process to run from one stage to another. So if that doesn't happen, I come in and I figure out what is wrong, either in the code work or in the machine hardware itself, and then from there we can figure out what we can do to rectify that.
STL CEO Gitinji says the company's extremely competitive human resource development program helped bring in more women.
What you see at STL, whether it's deliberate or inadvertent, is a result of pretty rigorous, attention to the human resource capacity of the individual. And so it so turns out that these young women in STEM at STL have a very compelling story to tell. They are extremely intelligent, they are doing exceptionally well, they are training very well, and they're producing very well.
The company is working to establish relationships with other universities in Kenya, such as Strathmore and University of Eldoret, as well as in Uganda and Rwanda. Mariama Diallo, VOA News, Nairobi.
At the mention of bagpipes, perhaps you think of Scotland. Well, back here in Nigeria, young and talented Chukwu Kalu is living out his fascination with bagpipes as he sets out to revive the art which has been fading since Nigeria's independence in 1960. This report shows Kalu and his band take to the streets of Abuja, Nigeria's capital, with their unique twist on old melodies.
Chukwu Kalu and his band make an eye-catching spectacle, dressed in red kilts and making a procession down the street. By playing familiar songs with a unique twist, Kalu is on a mission to revive interest in the fading art of bagpipe music. It started as a three-man band and grew as it gained popularity. It's now a 24-member group performing at weddings and national events.
The vision moves beyond I, knowing about this as a person, to seeking a revival of this type of musical genre in Nigeria and in West Africa. So the prominence of this came in the early 2000s. And since then, we've been progressing gradually from three-man band to 5, 8, 10, up to 24 as we speak.
Apart from being a way to keep young people occupied, at $375 per gig, Mr. Kalu believes it's quite a lucrative pastime.
We are making our effort to see that young people, especially civilians, who have nothing doing, instead of engaging into crimes, that they should engage themselves into learning this special instrument, because this is a special instrument. I can tell you it's a special instrument, it is not common. Anybody who eventually learns how to play the bagpipe can never be hungry.
As the band marches up and down the streets, onlookers often stop and stare, some even capturing the spectacle on their phones.
What I like most is their dressing. This dressing. The dressing can just move you. Whatever you are doing, you will just say, let me see what these people are up to. Yes, they are dressing. They are neat. With what they are wearing that is different from what other people are wearing, I think they are unique.
Kalu also has training sessions for the Nigerian police and local youth in Abuja, where he teaches the secrets of this unique musical instrument. He hopes to one day visit the National Piping Centre in Scotland with his band and solidify the connection between his Nigerian roots and the Scottish influence that has shaped his musical journey.
Pollution from discarded plastic, metals and other items is a persistent problem in Nigeria. Some young people are doing what they can to clean up the trash and also make strides towards sustainable development. Gibson Emeka has this story from Abuja, Nigeria, narrated by Salim Solomon.
Rita Adehai began her journey into green innovation in 2018, armed with a passion for waste recycling. Her social enterprise, EcoBarter, buys waste from Nigerian households and converts it into new products like fibers for pillows, shoes, and bags.
I've always said as a child that I want to leave the world better than I met it.
The geology student says she reaches people through collection points where they can drop off their household waste in exchange for money.
Is we are enabling households and every other person use their waste as a currency. The vision for EcoBarter is to bring sustainability to both people and planet. And when you talk about planet, you talk about sustainability, you talk about circular economy, you talk about the green economy.
In aiding the transition to a so-called green economy, Adihai is also making a small dent in Nigeria's unemployment rate. About 300 people work for EcoBarter, making the minimum wage of $39 a month or more. 23-year-old Hanatu Zakaria, an employee of EcoBarter, says she's happy to be employed.
When I was not working before, things was difficult for me. But when I start working, everything is going normal. And even me too, I want to have my own shop that I will be doing myself. I can employ many women.
The job appeals to young Nigerians with a streak of idealism. Speaking at the 2023 International Youth Day, Adesa Okadeji, who works for the Nigeria Youth Sustainable Development Goals program, says her goal is to make life easier for young people.
The outcome for this event is a call to action to meaningfully engage young people towards achieving and advancing the SDGs in Nigeria, which will highlight the barriers and solutions to reducing inequalities and increasing development.
It has not been easy. Adihai says she has had to battle Nigeria's lack of awareness on recycling and the high cost of coordinating enterprises that will transform the trash. Despite the challenges, Adihai is making her mark and believes that with the right support, more young people in Nigeria will have the creativity, potential, and capacity to make a difference. For Gibson Emeka in Abuja, Nigeria, Salim Solomon, VOA News.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. To remember that channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Joker Rogers. Thanks for watching and goodbye.